Welcome back to Behavioral Health 2000. Today, we will present you with some data on poverty in the United States and the impact of poverty. In a previous lecture, we have discussed the impact of poverty on the brain. But since that lecture was produced and put up on our website, new findings have emerged which are rather alarming. And the context is even more urgent now that, as you know, the Affordable Care Act is under review by our current administration and may in fact be altered or eliminated, adding additional terrific burden on folks that are afflicted by poverty in the US. So this paper appeared a couple of years ago in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and it's written by a Nobel Prize winner for economics, Angus Deaton, and an associate Ann Case at Princeton University. It talks about the rising morbidity and mortality in midlife among white, non-Hispanic Americans in the 21st century. So the summary says that there is an increase in all-case mortality in middle-aged white non-Hispanic men and women in the US between 1999 and 2013. This change reverses decades of progress in mortality and is unique to the United States. No other rich country saw a similar turnaround. The increase for whites was largely accounted for by increasing death rates from drug and alcohol poisoning, suicide, and chronic liver disease. Opiate addiction, of course, is a major factor as well in this scenario. So this rising midlife mortality is paralleled by increases in midlife morbidity. And here you see the data. You see that in many countries, France, Germany, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, the mortality rate in this particular population is going down rather quickly, except in the US, where you see a steep climb in the mortality of this group aged 45 to 54. So we are unique among other industrialized countries, developed countries, in this regard. Now here is the breakdown of cause of death, and you can see that poisonings are very high, and these include both alcohol-related poisonings, of course, suicidal drug overdoses, and opiate addicted deaths that have occurred with increasing frequency, especially in northeastern states and in the south of the American states. So suicides also have been climbing rather rapidly, as well as chronic liver disease, which is of course a fallout from alcohol dependence. The next slide, you can see the suicide mortality rate from 1999 to 2013, and is broken down by regional states here in the US. The Northeast is blue, Midwest is red, the South is black, and the West is green. You see all these rates are going up. The northeastern region here, the blue, is particularly steep in its rise. The next slide, you see the mortality again listed by age group. You can see that the problem begins already in the young adulthood, 30 to 34 and 35 to 39 years of age, but it seems to be particularly pronounced in the 50 to 54 bracket. So in mid-age, when people are losing their job and have great difficulty becoming re-employed to a large extent because of their age. So there is a syndrome now called the Desperation Syndrome, or desperation-related causes of disease, which have to do with economic factors and chronic unemployment. Now, there is an association already known between income and life expectancy in the United States. And here you can see that the greater your income is, the lower your death rate is. You can see $100,000 per year is here, and here you are in the poverty range, and you can see the death rate is several-fold higher when you are afflicted by poverty compared to being in the top 1% of the earnings in the population. Now here is the survival rate, again broken down by income, and you can see here that your life expectancy, of course, is much higher at any age group depending on your income level. So the finding continues from early adulthood to middle age and higher ages, that income range will predict your survivability or your pending mortality. So this is the expected death rate per household and income percentile. So at the bottom here, you have a life expectancy of 72.7 years in the bottom 1% of the population, which of course is a significant increase over past decades. But then as you make more money and you're in a higher economic class, your life expectancy keeps rising and there is no end in sight. You can see that the curve continues to go up ad infinitum here. The top 1% life expectancy is 87.3 years, so 15 years more than in the lower income bracket. Now, where does this take place? Well, the expected death rate from these various causes is clustered in some regions of the country, namely the Midwest and the South. So some of these regions, of course, have a certain political identification as well. We know that this region here was the region that put the current president over the top in terms of his recent election. So the sense of desperation, dislocation, and hopelessness that yielded this particular vote is located in these particular regions, and these are regions where the death rate at age 40 is much higher than in other regions of the country. Now, this is related to other findings, namely obesity. Obesity being a strong predictor of cardiovascular disease, cancer, stroke, and many other problems. And you can see obesity is not equally distributed in the United States, but rather it's heavily clustered, again, in the South, in some areas of Texas, in the Deep South here, and some areas in the Northeast. California, Nevada, Arizona are relatively less affected. So why should that be? It can't just be good Southern cooking and the fried food that the South is famous for. There may be a combination of psychosocial factors involved here. Social attitudes, perhaps some kind of religious influence, addictive disease, poverty, all of these factors will combine to cause obesity, which then in a negative feedback loop creates further problems down the line. So conclusion then is that low-income individuals die much earlier than high-income individuals, but this gap is variable over space and time. The key question is, there are some spillovers from rich to poor. Regulation, good public transportation may mitigate against some of the effects of poverty. Exposure to neighbors with healthy behaviors may likewise be ameliorating some of these effects. Now, statistics constructed here are available, and I encourage you to look these up on a website, healthinequality.org, which gives you a more detailed account of these findings. So then, this is a psychosocial and sociological update on mortality and morbidity with regard to obesity in the United States. And you can see everything is connected to everything else. Social factors, psychological factors, depression, drug addiction, obesity, unemployment, and poverty all combine to impact the health of large populations within the United States. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll see you soon again at a presentation here at Behavioral Health 2000.